Okay, welcome back. I'm going to talk you through how to log into StatCrunch and access the data that we're going to be working with. First, you want to go ahead and go to statcrunch.com, and then I'm going to sign in. And I happen to have myself saved in here already for my account, but you'll want to log in or you want to create an account before you are able to access anything. And then I'm going to open StatCrunch. So I click on Open StatCrunch. StatCrunch is loading. So now this is what your typical StatCrunch page will look like. And we're going to load some data into StatCrunch that is from shared data. And it's really important that you pay attention to the title as well as who is owned, who the data is owned by, because there might be different versions of the same data set. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to data, and then we're going to hit load, and we're going to go from shared data sets at the bottom. And the first data set that we're using is we're dealing with cereal brands. And I'm going to go ahead and search that. Now notice that there's a bunch of different cereal brands. We want the one that is by StatCrunch featured, and then that loads our data for us. Now we want to make a dot plot of our data. So notice in the screenshot before we had seven rows of data, and we had like 6 variables. Across, we've got fat, sodium, fiber, carbohydrates, sugars, potassium, who manufactures it, all sorts of different things. So there's a bunch of data here, and the data goes on. I believe it said that there were 77. So we're just going to go down to the bottom here. There are faster ways to go to the top and the bottom. One of the data sets that we're going to use later on has 5,022. Sorry, it's not working for me right now. 222 data values in our graph, and so it's hard to, you don't want to just keep hitting scroll down to try and see all of the data, and we'll talk about how to summarize our data later. So what we want to do is we want to create a graph that is a dot plot. So I'm going to hit graph and dot plot, and then it's going to ask me to select columns. Now, because I'm on an iPad, I don't have my mouse where you'll actually see different things pop up. You want to select more than one because we're talking about protein and fiber. If I just hit protein, then there's one item here that shows up. But let's say I wanted to do protein and fiber. I want to hit the control key and select both of them. So now I have 2 items selected here, and that's what's going to plot for me. If you're on an Apple, it's a command key. It's next to the space bar. If you're on PC, it's the control key to select 2 things. Now, we want to click compute here, and you'll see that we have 2 dot plots, and they're on the same scale, which is really nice. Now it's going to ask us to describe a few characteristics. Well, protein's down low and fiber's up high. And remember, previously I mentioned, and we've talked about in the OLI online, there's different characteristics that you talked about. You talked about range, you talked about unusual data, you talked about typical data, central, and I gave you the acronym SUCS in a previous video for shape, center, spread, and unusual features. Protein looks like it has a higher typical value because of the height and around the 3 area, whereas fiber looks like it's a little bit lower. Fiber is more spread out because the data ranges from 0 to 14, whereas protein only goes up to 6. Protein is a little bit more symmetric. Fiber is skewed to the right. There's a couple of different ways that you could describe this data, but as we move forward, I would ask you to describe the distribution using those 4 letters of the acronym: shape, unusual point, center, and spread. Okay, and now we're going to move back to the OLL guide and talk about distribution shape for chapter 7. I'm moving on to question number 4 at the bottom. We've got these different pictures for the distribution, and I want you to go ahead and describe those.